Voted from 45 nationalities. Applicants were from 180 countries. And now these people are going to 7 different countries to build 7 different businesses.
What?
Sort of master union on steroids.
Where do you look Tetr in, let's say, the next 10 years?
The goal is to attract the best 100, 500 students every single year. In fact, there's a bet between me and one of our students saying if he is able to raise $100,000, we'll fund him for his market research and his GTM.
Can you talk about what is an ideal student profile?
The people who have been TEDx speakers, there were people who were running successful companies before they even came here. Their ambition is to make it a $100 million, a $500 million, a $1 billion company.
Sir, I have heard that Tetr has been given a lot of scholarship because it's its first year. But how does this make sense?
Don't come to Tetr if
At CoSpire, we've been talking about modern education setups, and this feels like something that's going to truly bring about a change. Tetr College of Business was founded by Pratham Mittal, the founder of Masters Union as well, the college I study at, with the intent to take the Masters Union pedagogy of learning by doing to a global scale. And in today's video, we had the honor to deep dive into what exactly is Tetr and what is it solving for with the director of Tetr, Tarun Gangwar sir himself. Also, this is my first podcast that I'm co-hosting with Krishna Gupta, a very close friend of mine and a member of CoSpire. Before you enjoy this conversation, do join our WhatsApp community where we keep talking about different modern education setups and how can you optimize your chances to get in these places. Have a happy time watching this one. Hello Tarun sir, welcome to our video. I'm Yashovardhan Kandawat and this is my co-host Krishna Gupta, and today I think we want to talk about education in general, and we know that you're running a very interesting college about which I think we can talk later in the video. When we were researching about who is Tarun Gangwar sir, we realized that you had a BTech plus MTech from IIT Bombay, and then soon after in your career, the three things that stood out for us were director at Vedantu, director at Masters Union, and now director at Tetr, which is the college we're going to talk about in length. But has your interest in education and your career in education happened just by chance, or was there a conscious call that hey, I want to do something in education and stay ahead of the curve always?
I don't know if I can call it ahead of the curve truly. Education is not, as you know, the most glamorous industry to kind of work in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think 2, 3 things happened that kind of led it. I think it's partially planned, partially by choice. So interesting, even I was in college. This was, I think I was in second or third year, same as you guys. There used to be this provision of internships at IIT Bombay, which then used to be an internship cell.
Mm.
So an internship had come through, which was, and I was pursuing chemical engineering. So this was at one of the
Yeah.
largest chemical engineering firms in the world. And I had successfully qualified for it. It was supposed to be well paid at a chemical plant, etc., etc. This was around the same time that as going through the speech of Steve Jobs, that
Okay.
"Stay hungry, stay foolish" speech. It had gotten popular around that time. This was 12 years ago.
Oh,
Okay. And I'd also read the Rashmi Bansal book at that time, which was by the same name.
okay.
Interestingly, at that time, I had just started to get interested in education as a space. And Ahmedabad used to have a center called Lavijay Mathai Center for Innovation in Education.
Hmm.
In fact, I don't know if a lot of people still know about it. It's a dedicated center at IIM Ahmedabad which focuses just on grassroots innovation in education. It's named after R.J. Mathai, who was also the founder for IIM Ahmedabad.
Uh-huh.
So I had written to the director at that time, and it was a cold email, and this was
Yeah.
again before Ankur Warikoo made cold emails popular. I written him a cold email saying I want to work at the center, I want to work with you, see what's happening at grassroots in education, and he hadn't reverted back.
Okay.
So now the rule at IIT was that if you accept an internship,
You have to do it.
and you have to do it, and if
Mm.
you don't do it, then you're kind of restricted from the process. You won't be able to avail placement cell opportunities, etc., etc. So I was very afraid of saying yes to the internship, because then if the director responded, and I wouldn't be able to kind of then pursue that, right? So there's this very famous line by Steve Jobs saying you can only connect the dots looking backwards, you can't connect them looking forward. So I said, okay, let me take this bold bet, so to say. I'll go and I'll say no to the company for the
Oh.
internship opportunity. So I was a hero in my mind, and I went ahead and I said, okay, I don't want to pursue this. I'm thinking of something else, etc., etc. And the day I came back, within 2 hours, the director replied saying he's not in India on that summer and he won't be able to entertain me. So I actually didn't go to Ahmedabad in that summer. I ended up taking something else. But because I was kind of quite sincere in my conversation and very authentic in what I'd said to him, he called me the next summer. So instead of my second year, I did this in third year. That became quite a transforming experience in itself, because the kind of people I met, the kind of experiences I had. And then one thing led to another. I started working more in that space and so on and so forth. And since then, this kind
It's
of
been
continued.
education.
Yeah.
So, sir, there has been a lot of innovation in sectors like automobile, manufacturing, and fashion. But education lately hasn't been able to keep up with it. So, is this the place Tether is coming from, or is it something else?
Yeah. So I think two things, right? One is, why these things, for example, have been so innovative, right? Because these are more focused on end consumers. Like you want a new car every 5 years, you want a new mobile phone every 5 years. So because the end user is so sensitive towards that particular need of having a new model, having an innovative model, you are forced to innovate yourself. If you don't, then you're kind of out innovated by your competitors, right? In education, sadly, that hasn't been the case. The end consumer and the customer are two very different people. And then the people who are actually benefiting out of it, which is, let's say, the corporate and the industry, are again the third stakeholder. So there are parents involved, there's students involved, there's school administration involved, there's industry involved.
Bro.
Because so many different stakeholders are involved. The lack of innovation is not hurting any one particular individual. And it kind of stays status quo for a very, very long time. From where Tether is coming is actually partly again that reason that you said, and partly also on the success of Masters Union in some sense. See, Masters Union was from that pain point of saying, why are people not learning by doing when we know that that's the best way to learn? And that's not a new knowledge. It's not like Masters Union discovered that piece of information. If you look at research, there's been learning theories and learning frameworks which have said for at least tens and 20s of years now, at least for decades, that learning by doing is the best way to learn.
Yeah.
But still, colleges have not been able to adapt that into a teaching framework.
Hmm.
That's what Master Union, I think, was able to do successfully, of saying, okay, learning by doing is powerful, but how do you convert that into a working curriculum for a college and make it operational as a school? Because it worked so well, both at UG level, at PG level, is where we thought that if this model works, if learning by doing works, if learning from industry practitioners works, then why not take it to a global stage, right? It is not a function of then whether I do it in Delhi or I do it in Denmark or I do it in US. It will work every single time, right? So that's where Tether came from, of saying, how do I take Masters Union international? If we have to take it truly international, then the cohort has to be international. Then these businesses that people are building have to be in different markets. Then they can't be just based out of Delhi. The moment you're able to do that, the moment you're able to take this model to a global audience and B, to a global market, that's what Tether is essentially trying to do. It's trying to take Masters Union to a global audience in a global market. And that's why now, if you look at, and I'm sure you've gone through Tether curriculum, the idea is that the cohort is from 45 nationalities, applicants were from 180 countries, and now these people are going to 7 different markets, 7 different countries to build 7 different businesses. Just taking that same idea of learning by doing, but at a much, much, much larger global scale. In fact, like we jokingly call it, it's sort of Master Union on steroids.
I think, can you talk about Tether as an independent entity from Masters? Or do you in your head somewhere relate ki, oh, these are similar brands, because I think the founder is same, and a big part of the team is has worked at Masters and then went to Tether. So is there an association between it, or these are two independent entities?
So as far as day-to-day operations are concerned, obviously they're both completely independent entities. The way I would say that they're related, one is, like you said, the founding team is same for both of them. But also, more importantly, I think a lot of things we're able to do well at Tether right on day one is because we're building it after having spent 5 years at Masters Union. So a lot of the learnings that came in Masters Union in, let's say, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 are already available to us at Tether right on day one. So again, it's a more refined, a more global version of Masters in that sense, because you're able to incorporate all of those learnings right at day one. A lot of learning by doing that happened for Masters Union as an institution. We're able to build on top of that right from day one. And I think that has been a very big plus point for us. A lot of problems we never had to face ourselves because the team at Masters Union or had already gone through that. right? But as far as day-to-day operations are concerned, there are obviously two different entities. There's a separate team that operates completely independently.
Mhm.
So there, obviously, there's no correlation
Okay.
per se.
So we have heard Masters Union talk about this very boldly, that we want to be one of the top 10 global schools, probably India's first one, or definitely India's first one. Is there a similar goal for Tetr, or what is the goal, as in where do you look Tetr in, let's say, the next 10 years?
I think two more critical pieces than ranking. What we've realized is that ranking is still an external goal in terms of, it involves ranking authorities, it involves external parameters, and there
Yeah.
is so much you can do to influence that. But the goal, we don't want to focus on that. What we're trying to look at is basically two things. One is saying, can you inspire every year the world's top 100 or 500 students to come to Tetr? I think we're able to crack that. The remaining things will fall in place. I think one of my learnings from being at IIT was this, that what make IIT so great is the people who choose to go to IIT, leaving everything behind. If we can make Tetr that, if we can get every year 500 best 18-year-olds to come and decide to be a Tetr as their first choice of college, then Tetr will automatically become, it will start obviously reflecting in rankings and everywhere else. But the goal is to become a college which inspires, which attracts the best 100, 500 students every single year. I'll say there we are already on a good track. In the first batch, there's somebody who had an offer from King's College London, which is world's top 10 already.
Yeah.
And he decided to leave that and be here. So in that sense, people are already leaving world top 10 to be a Tetr.
And this is the first year.
This is the first cohort, right? So I think in that sense, from a ranking perspective, people are already leaving the world's top 10 to be a Tetr. And I think that's the path you would want to take. And the second is that we know that, even 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, Tetr will only be catering to a very small fraction of the entire student population. So how do we make sure that more and more people are able to benefit from this model of learning by doing? And there the idea is that, can we inspire other colleges to adapt this experiential learning model, right? And if we can do that, if we can have all the other 9 colleges in the world top 10, one obviously being us, to inspire a similar pedagogy, a similar curriculum, that's, I think, is the true impact. The true impact is not just doing it by yourself, but inspiring the other players in the industry to adapt to it. For example, I wouldn't name the college, but I was visiting for a conference to some college in Bombay, one of the top business schools in Bombay. And the day I was there, they were doing a demo day for their students, which I know is a property that Masters Union popularized, right? And I think that's the right way. If you can inspire more institutions to set up, there is a upcoming B school in Bangalore that's inspired, for lack of a better word, from Masters Union.
We don't want to take names.
Exactly. So as right now, I know there are at least 4 or 5 different institutions that have adopted similar pedagogy, similar curriculum. I think that's a big win. If you can set up more and more institutions and inspire more institutions to come up with similar experiences, that's the true win of the model. Because then Masters Union, again, is catering to, let's say, a few hundred or thousand students. But these institutions will broaden that pedagogy, will broaden that curriculum. And my goal is not for Tetr, but my goal is for business institutions overall, that maybe in 10 years, this becomes the default learning model. That somebody who is not doing this is unconventional.
Yeah.
This becomes the conventional and the mainstream. If Tetr as a learning model remains niche, remains unconventional, then I think we've kind of failed, because then we've not been able to prove that this is the best way to learn.
I think before this conversation, we are always thinking about the possible answer you would give to this would be that you'll talk about Tetr being one of the top 10 also, Tetr having a good name, etc. But as Krishna was talking about innovation, I think Tetr as a college probably will, and the goal is that it becomes one of those people which are leading the innovation. So when we say ki, competitors will outpace you if you don't innovate, I think all the colleges will think, okay, Tetr is going to outpace us, we'll have to follow up with them and keep changing the model.
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah. You talked about how the goal is also to get the top 100, top 500, top 1000 students of the world to enroll in Tetr. Can you talk about what is the ideal student profile, as in what is the metrics we're using to judge this best student profile?
So again, we talk about, how in regular colleges you talk about GPA.
Yeah.
So we've tweaked the definition of GPA, of saying you want somebody who has a high GPA, but the GPA here then stands for great perseverance and ambition.
Okay. Great perseverance and ambition.
Saying you're looking for essentially somebody who's very big ambition, who's not looking for a 9 to 5 job, whose goal is to not crack a particular company, who's thinking beyond that.
Mhm.
Right? So very highly ambitious people. Because you can teach finance, you can teach, marketing, you can teach product. You can't, very difficult to teach somebody to dream big. So I think ambition is the first hygiene check of saying how big are you thinking in life. Very difficult for me to put that in someone. I can definitely teach, the finance and the marketing and the product of the to everybody, right? So first is ambition. Second is saying what is the perseverance level. If you are highly ambitious, it's very likely that you will keep falling short of that goal, right? And unless you persevere, you will not hit that. So you're saying, okay, how persevere has this person be in whatever they've pursued, right? Even if it can be sports, it can be entrepreneurship, it can be cultural, it can be in hobby, it can be something, saying I want to play chess.
Yeah.
I'm sure all of you were following the previous example. He's been doing this for 12, 15 years now. Right? That kind of perseverance, I think, is very critical to be able to have that kind of ambition.
Mhm.
And third would be grit, that you don't give up. You have what it takes to kind of just keep hitting at it. So that's what the ideal student is: great perseverance, ambition. And I think, again, from the chess
Yeah.
championship recently, if you look at, it's the perfect example because
So
he had that
probably Mukesh is
ambition
the
even
one.
when he was 12 and 13, saying, I want to be the world's youngest chess champion. He persevered with that, and he had the grit that whenever he has faced defeats, he's lost matches, he's come back stronger. So I think he's the ideal candidate in some sense, but yeah, GPA.
We hope this video can reach Mukesh and then he talks to Tarun sir then. I think, can you also talk about so ideal student profile for somebody who's watching this? I think they're fairly understood it. But what are current real life example of students who you would consider as these are the traits in my students, or these are the specific students which I think, and these specific traits in those students are what make them stand out for Tetr?
Sure. I think this cohort specifically, because it was the first term, there was one more extra trait that's common through this batch. These are all early adapters. They've taken a bet on something which had never existed before, right? So one example I was already sharing, the student who left King's College to be here, the people who've been TEDx speakers, there were people who were running successful companies before they even came here,
Oh,
and doing a certain amount of revenues, a couple $1,000s a month. But again, their ambition is to make it $100 million, a $500 million, a $1 billion company. And they're saying, I'm doing okay in life. I'm making a few $1,000s, which for a 20-year-old or 19-year-old might be very good.
yeah.
Right? But they're not happy with it. So again, that ambition piece comes in.
Yes.
So there are people who are running marketing agencies, software agencies at the age of 18, 19, 20, picking up projects from developed countries, running good businesses. There are people who, again, want to be an entrepreneur but don't know the how of it. So are here to saying, okay, this can be a great exposure. There are also people who are already at colleges, experienced it for a year or two, and then decided that this is not the right fit for them, and then came here. So in the current cohort, if I would to say, there are entrepreneurs. There are also people who have been national level athletes, international level athletes. There are also people who had decided to never go to college and then looked at this model and said, if I had to go to college, then it better be this one. And then people who are already working also in some senses because they were done with their college, etc., and they've decided to be here. Yeah, there's somebody who had spent almost 3 years at college, was working as a sound engineer, and then decided to be at Tetr. So yeah, that's the profile of the batch in some sense.
So, but all of these skills that you just mentioned are very intangible in nature. So, what is the admission process looking like, and how do you measure all of these qualities while the student applies for the college?
Yeah, I think that's what makes the selection process more difficult for us also as a body, but also more interesting for both the parties involved in that sense.
Okay.
So in terms of process, the first one becomes about writing an essay-based application. So they write around 3 to 4 mini essays, which talks specifically about this, of saying what's one activity that you believe you've been entrepreneurial about in your life so far. Can be small, the skill doesn't matter. What's the spirit behind it? Right? What's the greatest achievement? What do you think are one area where they persevered for a really long time? So applications where they get a chance to demonstrate these 3 GPAs that we spoke about. The second becomes, if that they do well on that, the second becomes a AI-based exam. And I know it's a difficult thing to do on a one-on-one basis, but again, AI has come to our rescue there. We've done an AI-powered exam called Tetr Trial, which focuses on their aptitude, their problem-solving skills. And now with the help of technology, you can actually measure some of these skill sets, which are difficult to measure in an otherwise traditional exam, so to say. So for example, on your ability to articulate your thoughts and to think creatively, there's a question in Tetr Trial, and I don't want to reveal the whole exam, but maybe one or two. where you get a moral dilemma on the spot.
Okay.
Your camera is on. For example, the famous trolley problem, right? Or the Ford Pinto problem. A lot of these moral dilemmas. For example, if let's suppose you're programming an EV,
Okay.
would you program it for saving the life of somebody who's on the road, or would you program it in a conflict situation, or would you program it for saving the life of the person inside?
That's so thought-provoking and interesting.
Yeah, right. And you get like 60 seconds or 120 seconds to answer this on the spot on camera, and a video is being recorded. So that then that video gets analyzed by AI and reaches to the team with the proper parameters and grading, which we then look at. So this becomes like the second phase. If they do well on this as well, this is like almost a 1.5 hour exam. Then we've set up a panel of industry experts across. For example, Dr. Edward Rogers, who's also a professor for you guys, also the ex-chief knowledge officer at NASA. Couple more such people are on that panel. There's some Harvard faculty that's on that panel. They interview these students one-on-one, completely independent of Tetr or any association with it. And then it is with this combination of these essays, this AI-powered exam, and these interviewer feedback that you sit down and you try to evaluate everybody on these parameters, which then by the time gives you enough data points to say, okay, how do they score against this? And now because we've looked at 90,000 plus applications, there's enough data to benchmark of saying, okay, what kind of student will succeed at Tetr? And then through which the selection happens.
90,000 applications is a number, as in one that's very fascinating. Second, for the Tetr trial part we were talking about, is there a right answer to these questions as you talked about, the model dilemma? Is there a right answer, or it's more about how does the student think about it?
Yes, there's no right answer, obviously. The idea is for them to be able to A, articulate their thoughts confidently, and B, have a structured thought process. I may argue either ways, but is there a rationale, is there a structure to my argument? And as long as that is present, it doesn't matter whether you're arguing for A or B.
Okay.
So, sir, when I joined Masters Union, it took me 3 to 4 months to settle in here, even when I just shifted a state. But here we are changing a country in every 6 months. So, how will the students settle in?
Okay. Which phone do you use?
I use Samsung.
Okay. If you use OnePlus, you have a very famous tagline. It says never settle. Right? So that's what the thought is. Why you want to settle when you're in your undergrad years? You believe that these 3-4 years are super critical. And I agree that people are not able to settle down per se in any country, etc. But that's by design. We don't want you to settle down. Like, if you're settling down, that essentially means you're going into that comfort zone, and that's not the idea. So the way we look at it is that 4 to 5 months is good for you to understand the market. It's good for you to get culturally familiarized with that space. So, for example, if I spend 4-5 months in a city, I understand the culture well enough. I understand the local nuances. I understand market nuances. I understand how businesses are done in that space. What attracts audiences or customers in that market. What works for them. What doesn't work for them. And that's the understanding we're trying to build. Right? That's one. Second, more importantly than the place is the people. So a lot of that sense of belongingness, a lot of that sense of settling down comes from the people you are with. Now, if I was an individual who's moving locations every 6 months, then obviously it will be very unsettling because I have to I have to form new bonds, new relationships every 6 months. But because you're traveling as a cohort of 120 people, your friends are moving with you. Your faculty is moving with you. Your staff is moving with you. Right? Your cohort manager, your program manager is moving with you. And that's a very beautiful experience because then it's not about getting unsettled after every 4 months. It's about actually traveling the world with your friends and family in some sense, right? And that kind of solves for it. And that's why people are so excited. And the people are so excited because now they're traveling with their best friends to 7 different countries. So it's actually like a long extended trip that's going on for 4 years where you're building businesses and you're learning. And that element of unsettling is taken away by that. Secondly, logistically, what happens is Tetr takes care of your accommodation, your commute, your hostels, your visas, etc. And that also makes life easier for people because then again, you don't have to figure out a new accommodation every time. You don't have to figure out your visas and travels, etc. every time. There is somebody else taking care of it for you. And that also makes it much more easier and convenient from that perspective.
So, if I'm a student, and for example, we are in Singapore, and I land a very good internship at a fintech company. So, do I have the option to leave the course, or like how should I look at it? Because, for example, if I want to stay there, then what are my possibility or the best choice that I have to pursue it?
So interestingly, Tetr already has a career labs. In fact, it's very unique for a college which just started. And within its first term, more than 70% of the students who applied for internships in Tetr already got them, and they've done cumulatively, I think, more than 30,000 dirhams in internship stipends. These are all paid internships in Dubai, across DIFC, across large brands, across startups, across government bodies, everywhere. So that model is already in place. The way it works is that typically on behalf of students, we are able to negotiate with the recruiter to saying, can you limit the number of working hours to, let's say, 10 to 20 hours a week, instead of doing a full 40-hour work week. And recruiters are very understandable of that. So they are very accommodating on that piece. That way, students are able to do classes, work on their projects, and continue doing these internships. Now, so far, we've done 2 to 3 month long internships, which have fitted well within the term. One new thing that we're trying with this term is also remote internships, which are 6 months long. So you're able to do 6 month long internships while even traveling across locations. At a particular location, typically internships are 2-3 months long. So nobody has to stay back on that term. They can start and end comfortably within the term that they're there.
But let's say next year a student at Tetr gets a full-time offer or full-time internship of something for which the company is saying, hey, can you you can leave the college and come with us. Would you allow that? And the reason that I'm asking this question is to understand that are we looking at Tetr as a accelerator for your life sort of thing, where if the desired output has been given, if let's say I actually just wanted to land the best available full-time job available, that is the goal, I get that and I leave it. Is that a allowed thing or can't do that?
So I think from a policy perspective, the way the stance that we have taken is we look at the opportunity cost of it and then take a call. There's not a strict no and there's not a strict yes to it. In the sense that, for example, in the last term itself, there were some students who wanted to leave classes for 4 weeks to be at a startup residency. We met the founder. We vetted the whole thing of saying what they're doing exactly in those 4 weeks. What kind of time are they going to spend on this? What's the people that they're working with? What kind of support they're getting? And when we realized that these 3 or 4 weeks will be actually helpful for them, we allowed them to do those classes remotely, submit their assignments later on, and facilitate that whole piece. In fact, very recently, some of our students had an invite for a Forbes 30 under 30 event in Abu Dhabi. And it was Tetr who facilitated their stay and their commute and their travel costs, because we wanted our students to be at that event. So it's about opportunity cost of saying whatever it is, be it a job, be it an internship, be it even a VC funding or a incubator offer. What is it that you stand to gain versus what will you gain if you continue to stay at Tetr? If it is something short term, for example, let's suppose you may get an internship which is paying, I don't know, maybe $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month. Again, from a 19-year-old perspective, this might look very lucrative.
Yeah.
But from a long-term perspective that the student has a lot more potential. And if he continues, he'll do much, much more than $1,000, $2,000 a month internships. Obviously, the answer would be no.
Okay.
Right? If you believe that this person has cracked something which would be very, very beneficial for the journey that this individual wants to take, and it will help them in their venture, then obviously you say yes to it.
Okay.
So the idea is to look at the opportunity cost of whatever is there on the table. And if we believe that this is going to be student this is going to be beneficial to the student, then you allow that. Otherwise, you say no to it. Irrespective of yes or no, the thought process remains same of saying what is the best use of the student's potential, what is the most beneficial thing for the student in the long run. As long as you look at that long-term perspective, as long as you look at it from a student-first lens, we know that we'll take the right call. So I think those two parameters remain same. It has to be a student-first decision. We should not become prisoners of our own legacy. We should not say, Tetr has this curriculum, so you have to go through this curriculum. Then we end up becoming like everybody else.
Yeah.
So it has to be a student-first decision, and it has to be a long-term decision, not from that short-term lens. As long as those two things are taken care of, we know that we'll end up at the right decision.
I think that is what we are trying to understand from this, that it's not about Tetr is just another college, which is, let's say, there are 10 things that are different in this place. It is a mindset shift that we are talking about. So it's more about that mindset that, hey, how can we optimize for a student-first approach than exactly what you said, a legacy.
In fact, there's a bet between me and one of our students.
Okay.
Saying if he is able to raise $100,000 in this by the end of this term, will allow him to do one entire term remotely while he builds his company, and will fund him for his market research and his GTM to the SF. So a lot of these bets have already been made because we believe that these are right incentives, right bets for the students to kind of look at. But again, opportunity cost and what is in the best interest of the student.
Mhm. I'm sure people watching this right now, a lot of students will now be intrigued by, yeah, I might apply to Tether. One thing that from an application POV, I think we can also touch upon is that what do you value more? Is it the current achievements that a student has, or is it the growth potential in them?
I think at this point of time, right? See, we are talking to 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old. It would be foolish and almost unwise to say that A person has more potential than B. I think everybody that we've spoken to so far comes with great potential in that sense. I think what we're trying to optimize for, right? One is authenticity. What you're saying, authenticity and integrity in that sense. Because if we know that the person is not speaking the truth, then there is no way to kind of fairly evaluate the individual. So one recommendation of sort from an application perspective would be to be truly yourself. Right?
Okay.
And I think second would be that don't come to Tetr if you're looking for a safe route to cracking a job, right? If the idea is to crack one particular company or one particular 9 to 5 job in a particular geography, then I'm not even sure if Tetr would be the best route for that. Come to Tetr if you believe that you have a lot of potential as an individual, you can do great in life, and you need a platform that can nurture you, that can support you, that can give you the mentorship, that can give you the guidance, that can give you the framework to kind of work on those things. Then I think that was the right place. So A, it's definitely not for everybody. B, whoever is coming to Tetr, I would strongly advise that they be their authentic self in the application process. And C, look at it from that framework, from that platform lens of saying this is a platform that can help you achieve big in life if you are putting in the effort.
I think very comprehensive conversation around modern education and Tetr as a college. These were all the questions we had. Thank you so much, Tarun sir, for taking out time for this. And I'm sure for the viewers also, this was a great experience understanding this place. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer them. You can list them down in the comments. Thank you, sir.
All the best, guys, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
And that was today's episode with Tarun Gangwar. I hope this conversation changes some perspective in your head about how modern education actually is. And I hope that you got to know more about Tetr. I mean, it's amazing to see how people are studying at 7 different countries in a span of 4 years.
Also, we are building a WhatsApp community of like-minded students who are generally interested in modern education. The link is in the description. Do join it.
Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.